Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Blue Jays Center podcast presented by the Sick Podcast Network. The Jays continue to lose series, but we continue to give you content. Let's get into it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Blue Jays Center.
Bautista drives it deep left field. Gone!
The sickest Toronto Blue Jays podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Cole Whiston, Rob Pantelimon, and James Price here with you, as always, to talk Blue Jays baseball, presented by the Sick Podcast Network. And we start with recapping the Royals and the Nats, two series that the Jays lose, their fourth series loss in a row so far. We thought that the picture for the Toronto Blue Jays to start the year was grim. I think that we are currently at the grimmest point of 2024 with this staff. So I think that I'll leave the floor open in terms of where we're going to go with it first. Rob, and I will let you start.
Yeah, I think it's only right to start with Alec Manoah. I think that was the big story from this week, that Alec Manoah was going to get the call up. Obviously, earlier in the week, we learned that Yariel Rodriguez was going to be placed on the 15-day IL with an injury, and that paved the floor. It was a lot of mystery. What are they going to do? Are they going to roll the four-man rotation with the off days? Are they going to have a bullpen day? Or are they going to give Alec Manoah, who was terrific in his last start in Buffalo, a look? Ultimately, they went with door C. Alec Manoah got the start today, and while some stuff looked promising early on, the Blue Jays scored a ton of runs. It looked like it was going to be a really positive story. Mm-hmm. So we all know with the Toronto Blue Jays the last 2 years, whenever something good happens, it's immediately offset. Alec Manoah blows up, has the Nationals put up 5. I believe it was the bottom of the 4th against them, including a 3-run home run by Jesse Winker that basically was a knockout blow to Manoah. They end up losing the series, and just really sucks, man. I'll let you take it on from here, but that's where we're going to start. We'll start with Alec Manoah.
Yeah, I completely agree. Alec Manoah is definitely the story from today. We scored 8 runs in a game that we lost, which is an unknown or an uncommon thing for this Blue Jays.
Can't happen for this type of team. The team that doesn't
Exactly.
score runs, you just can't afford to waste a game like that.
Exactly. So we'll get into whether or not we thought it was the right decision to go Alec Manoah. We talked about it off camera. We talked about it on the Blue Jays Center Instagram page. Yes. Let's talk about it here. I definitely leaned in the camp that for a guy that had, I think, a 6+ ERA in the minors off of one good start, did not deserve to start a meaningful game in the majors this year, especially with this team being below 500. I think I would have trusted the pen just as much as I would have trusted him today, except the pen at least deserves to be here, and they're already on the 26-man roster. And then it turned out, despite the first 2 innings that did look promising, I was worried about consistency, and that's one thing with Alec Manoah that's been tried and tested this entire time. He wasn't consistent enough to get through his outing, and eventually, it's not the reason that we lost the game, obviously, but it's a big part of it. And I'm shocked that afterwards John was. Well, I'm not shocked at John. I'm shocked that the decision with the front office clearly has made that the one start wasn't going to matter. It didn't matter how tonight looked. He was going to get another one in the big leagues, which I thought I was even more shocked by. Getting the start, I was shocked by, and now the fact that we've now learned that he's going to get another, I'm even more shocked. James, what do you know?
I mean, I was in the camp that he. Here, let me try and word this properly. He was the right choice for today, but we all agree, that he didn't deserve the start today at all. But the other options of Paulo Espino pumping 87 meatballs, and that's on a good day. I'd take the higher upside in Alec Manoah, even though, because you saw it in the first 3 innings, as Rob said, that bottom of the 4th is imploded. And I got a question for you guys. I'm very curious as to who made that call for Jesse Winker for a few reasons. The full count pitch, Jesse Winker, known as an off-speed hitter, base open, arguably one of their better hitters, and you throw him a slider. I mean, that didn't make much sense to me. Plus, it was probably one of the worst sliders you could possibly throw.
I was going to say that didn't really snap right down the plate.
That was the cherry on top to the whole thing. Yeah. But I didn't understand that call.
To be honest, I bet you the call came from the quote that we heard from John Schneider after the game, which, to be funny, I didn't completely disagree with it. He said from a stuff perspective, he liked what he saw today. Obviously, the stuff got hit hard when it was left over the plate, but the slider in particular, I actually did like how it looked early on, and I wasn't actually that upset with the decision to go to a slider on the inner half of the plate. Obviously, when you miss your spot, that's what happens.
Yeah, just when you're reeling like that in the inning that he was, and location was off, walked a couple guys, and then that I think was it a sinker that he threw to Garcia for the 2-run single was dick, and it was just like the location was off, and that's the whole thing about Alec Manoah. You gotta, if you're not going to throw strikes, they got to be competitive misses. And there's so many times where he's bouncing it off home plate, or it's it's so far outside it's not competitive. Putting him in
or a cookie over the plate.
Or right down the middle. Like there's really no in between, which is crazy because we look back at his old highlights and you're like, damn, this shit's lights out, man.
Yeah.
What the hell happened? But no, I thought it was the right move to put him out there to start today, just for the fact that it's the Nationals. It's not a jam stadium by any means. So you're not like bright lights at Yankee Stadium or anything like that, or Rogers Center beaming down on you. It was the right spot. Did I think he deserved to pitch? No. He definitely didn't deserve to pitch today. But out of all the options you had, I thought it was the best choice to put him out there.
Here's my thought process, and I'm in the James camp. I thought I was okay with letting him start today. We all agree, right? We all agree that coming into this season, we expected Alec Manoah to have some kind of role in this team, whether that was the 99th percentile Cy Young finalist that he was a couple of years ago, or at the very least a fifth starter. We agree that at some point he's going to need to pitch some innings for this team and in a viable role, not just in garbage time. He's going to need to start games for this team. And then we saw the season started. He obviously got hurt. Bowden Francis got the fifth starter role. That didn't go well. He ended up getting hurt. Yariel Rodriguez ends up replacing him in the rotation. And while the upside, you can clearly see the upside. I think while towards the end of his tenure, before he just got hurt, we saw that there were still some pretty sizable gaps in his production, that he was clearly not seasoned enough to be a realistic option to be your fifth starter long-term this season. And obviously Ricky Tiedemann got hurt. So at some point, and like literally this is a factual statement, like, they were going to need a fifth guy. On May 14th against Baltimore, they were going to need someone to start. You can mess with the four-man rotation through the off days. You'll be fine up until that day. You can't start anyone on short rest, so you're going to need someone to start that day. And Alec Manoah was the only guy. I mean, Paolo Espino, we can talk about him. If you don't trust Alec Manoah to go out there and give you a performance laterally to Paolo Espino, a guy who's 37, who has an ERA plus of like the low 80s, and in the short span of games you saw him this year had an ERA over 7, a guy who the last 4 years was with the Nats. So anyone that has as much information as possible is the Washington Nationals on Paolo Espino. I thought if you didn't trust him in that situation, you don't actually trust Alec Manoah to pitch for you this season. If you don't think he's a competent, if you don't think he's Paolo Espino in mid-May, you don't think he's a competent starter in June. You can't. There's a huge gap that you just wasn't going to fill, not enough time. So you were going to need him to start, whether it was today or May 14th against Baltimore. So I thought, out of those 2 days, I thought today was a much better situation, like you mentioned, James. He was coming off. I know it was only one start, and he was pretty much terrible the whole season in AAA, but it was a good start, something to build off of, and it's a much better environment against a Nationals team who's a below-average big league lineup versus the juggernaut that the Orioles are. So I thought you need to start him eventually. Might as well do it today in a much better environment, and unfortunately, it didn't work out, but I don't necessarily hate the idea of him starting. I mean, if you're trying to maximize just this game, yeah, you start Jose Barrios on short rest or on regular rest and roll with the four-man. But the Blue Jays knew that they're going to need Alec Manoah at some point to start. We know that he had dealt with confidence issues, and I thought it made sense that why you'd want to ease him into it as much as possible. Even though you probably, this is a game that you probably could have won had you just maximized and pitched Jose Barrios today. But I don't hate the process.
There's a couple things I want to back off of there.
Yep.
You wanted to maximize easing Alec Manoah in, and I get the thought process behind, like, in theory, that this would be easing him in. I think that starting him in the majors after one good start in AAA, despite every other start basically being horrific, isn't easing him in. That's my entire thing, is that I needed 1-2 more starts that were just as good as that AAA start for me to even think about him starting a big league game that actually matters. Which is why I thought that this wasn't easing him in. It was, you had one good start. Now we have to, get you in a spot where we're trying to win a series.
Sorry to interrupt, but you prefer Paolo Espino?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I did. I just simply because I think Paolo Espino could have gone one time through the order without giving up, or 2 times through the order without giving up 6 runs. Like, I was confident that was going to happen. I knew it was going to be a tough game for us to win because of an offensive standpoint, but in a game where you're facing a pitching staff with the Washington Nationals, I have a little bit more confidence in my offense to win a game 6-5, to win a game 7-5, to win a game, whatever it is. I was confident that this team was going to have a chance to win today with a pen. Not that I was not confident we were not going to have a chance to win with Alec Manoah, but I was definitely less confident. And my point is that it's simply because we only saw one good thing. Like, Paolo Espino, we're comparing Alec Manoah to Paolo Espino and saying Alec Manoah has higher upside. But if we're talking about 2024, that's just not the case. Like, Alec Manoah in 2024...
Alec Manoah was going to start against Baltimore anyway, though. You're going to need someone to start that.
No,
day.
But remember, that's 2 weeks from now. The guys on the IL are due up before then. We could have another fifth starter get off the IL before then. No, but we do know that their IL stint is over by then. We do know that. We don't know whether eligible.
They're legally eligible to play. Yeah. We don't know they're healthy enough to play. We don't know.
But we don't even know what the timetable is on any of them. Like, we don't know
how many IL stints actually. When you're available to come off, you actually come off that day. It rarely ever happens. It's usually prolonged a little bit afterwards.
Well, I think that is all dependent. Like, especially the Bowden Francis. Like, the Bowden Francis, he's been on it for longer than, like, obviously longer than Rodriguez has. So he's somebody.
I've heard no update on Bowden Francis.
No, I know that. But we also haven't heard any bad news on Bowden Francis. Like, that his timetable looks longer than the IL stint's going to be. Like, there just simply hasn't really been talked about.
Well, whether it's May 14th or not, at some point you're going to need Manoah to pitch. We talk about Bowden Francis, like we didn't just watch him to just be awful for 2 starts. We have no evidence that Bowden Francis is a good big league starter. Whereas there is the Blue Jays came into this season hoping that expecting Alec Manoah to give them something. So
it was
my
his
point is that if you don't trust him
in spring training,
you don't trust him or Paolo Espino, then at that point you just pull the plug. Just pull the plug on the plan and go out and get an external fifth starter. Because if you don't think he's as good as Paolo Espino in May, he's not.
I don't think that those two things are true. I don't think me saying that I don't trust him on May 3rd or May 4th, if I don't trust Alec Manoah on May 5th off the heels of one good AAA start on 7 bad AAA starts, I don't think that can be exclusively true to if I don't trust him on May 14th or if I don't trust him on May 31st or if I don't trust him I think that, yes, the Jays at some point were going to want Alec Manoah to pitch big league games this year. I did not think that May 5th was the time for that to happen. And yes, I do think that right now I would have trusted Paolo Espino on May 5th before I trusted Alec Manoah on May 5th. But
this is why we all agree in the sense that he didn't deserve to come up. But in this situation, if Yariel Rodriguez and Bowden Francis were healthy, this wouldn't be a topic.
Yes, I did want to bring that up. Like the Jays 100% got backdoored into this situation. Yep. They were going to. Like there was no conversation of Alec Manoah coming up to the big leagues and taking a rotation spot or moving to a 6-man rotation with Rodriguez or Francis or whoever it was going to be at the time. There was no conversation. That was not going to happen. The Jays did get literally fucking sent into a corner with this move. I understand that. And like there was no other situation. There was probably no better situation for Alec Manoah to get an opportunity in the big leagues than this one that just happened.
Let's be honest. Let's be honest. He saw the news that Yariel hits the IL, then has that last frisky.
If that was a coincidence.
Now and I'll get that chance.
Right.
And he did.
As if that was a coincidence. Plus, he's going up against Paul Skeens. Obviously, he's been talked about as the best pitching prospect in the minors right now. It was obviously a pitcher's duel. What?
Who just got called up, by the way?
He did?
Got called up today against Buffalo.
Yeah.
So.
And he just got the call.
Wow. He's making his big leagues debut on Friday. Anyway, that's not important. But
they're not important. But yeah, so they did. I understand that they were backed into a corner. I understand that 2 weeks from now there was another conversation going to be had with Alec Manoah. I understand that. But 2 weeks from now gives him one more start, and I'm a little bit more confident in one more start. Like I understand it's Baltimore, but the whole thing with Alec Manoah is we don't know if he's ready unless he's been consistent, and he hasn't been that in the minors. So that's why I was like, one good start. Could be 2 good starts or 3 good starts, and all of a sudden, boom, you have a consistent Alec Manoah, then you trust him. That's all I was asking for. We didn't get that yet, and that's why I didn't trust him on today.
Yeah.
But what do you guys feel about the fact?
that?
What do you guys feel? Yeah, I don't think we need to go any. But what do you guys feel about him starting again? Like the fact that the front office clearly already planned for him to make his next start in the rotation.
So I'll tell you this. I mean, again, this is all about upside for me. If I'm looking, it's assuming Yariel and Bowden can't go, who would I trust against the Baltimore freaking Orioles? I mean,
nobody.
Neither. Exactly. That's the
But
right
it won't be against Baltimore. It's going to be against Minnesota.
Yeah, like we're talking about his next start. Like, so
Right, so
what
it'd be
Rob was
Minnesota,
talking about is that the next fifth start that was
right.
mandatory
Yeah,
fifth
Baltimore.
starter was May 14th, but the next start for Alec Manoah will be Minnesota at home.
Right.
Yes.
So then that's obviously a much tougher task. In my opinion, a better team, and obviously the atmosphere is going to be a little bit
brighter
different
lights.
as well. Exactly. So I'd rather him over Paolo, guys. I've seen enough of that old fart to know what's going on.
So, but here's my thing. So today, by giving him the start today, I think that it even furthered your door for opening up to roll into a different guy when this fifth start rolls around again. Because today you didn't use that guy. You didn't use the guy on regular rest or whatever. You didn't use Jose Barrios. So I think today, with Alec Manoah being awful, I was surprised that they've already committed him to his next start when they didn't have to. Like, you didn't have to make that decision today, and it was already made.
My take would be this, because I believe with the start after that would be the Baltimore one, correct? So that would be the third start if that was the case. So my take is this: you put him out there against Minnesota. If it goes sideways and the other two guys aren't ready, then you skip. Can you do that?
But I'm not sure the off days. I'm not sure that I think that Baltimore is going to be a mandatory start. I'm not sure you have enough off days to
no matter what happens.
Then regardless, you're kind of screwed either way. Then I'd want him to be as seasoned as possible, at least
exactly
back up in the big leagues. It's
no. To
it's
me,
not
like
crazy your take. It's just crazy that we're in this situation.
Oh, it is. It's nuts.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
Professor, I don't think I think you're overestimating the gap between a Compton big league starter and Paolo Espino.
No, but I think you're underestimating the gap between Alec Manoah and that big league starter.
No. I'm not. As of right now,
what I'm saying is Paolo Espino and Alec Manoah are just as fall off from being a fifth starter equally.
Sure, but my point is that you're going to need Alec Manoah to pitch for you at some point, and then you're telling me right now, if today you think I'm not sure I disagree with you that Paolo Espino gave you a better chance to win today. But my point is that let's say we're going on a road trip. Let's say we're going, I don't know, let's go to LA, and then you're told, hey, we can take a plane tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, or we can take a bike. We leave right now. We'll be farther with the bike by 10 o'clock tomorrow. But if we're trying to reach our destination, our end goal, it's better to just wait and take the option B, the one that doesn't get you not as good in the short term, but has a better long-term upside. I think that's my thinking with the Espino versus Manoah.
I think it's like riding a plane that you know is going to crash.
Wow.
What?
I think it's like riding a plane that you know is crashing. And we chose to get on it. We're like, you know what? We're okay. There's a 75% chance this plane doesn't land properly today, but we're gonna get on it anyway.
Boys, this shit
I'll tell you one thing.
What happened here?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing. If the Blue Jays are gonna have a black hole in their fifth spot after we see how bad the bullpen looks in the offense, and maybe there's no point talking about it. Maybe this is just a lost season.
Yeah. Well, see, and okay,
we're not there yet. We're not there yet.
No, we're not there yet. But I do want to open up this question because obviously. This question is for the fans, because obviously they're going to have this conversation. A lot of casuals are going to have this conversation today in May. I'm not going to have it. I'm not going to have the conversation, but I am going to open up the door to have a conversation about the possibility of this Jays team being sellers at the deadline. Here's the question.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think that if this team is, let's say, 10 games or less above 500, at the deadline, it is better for this team to sell than it is to fucking, as we've seen in the past, fill around the edges, make a wild card game, probably lose in that round or the first round, and then we go into next offseason, have to answer all these questions again, with Vladdy and Bo losing their stock in terms of trade value because it's getting later and later until that contract comes up. Don't we think that it is actually a better scenario for this team to be at 500 or below so that this front office can, without question, sell at the deadline, sell off Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette if they already know that they are not going to be able to re-sign them in the offseason for a team-friendly deal or whatever the case may be. Don't we think that that picture is actually the better picture for this team going forward? Obviously, best case scenario is everybody turns it around. We're well above 500 at the deadline, and we can go all in at the deadline, all in the offseason, and actually contend for our final year. And then obviously, if it goes really bad, then the question's already answered. But if we're in that middle ground, don't we think it's better to be selling?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
Look. Let's be honest, guys. And this is like a really broad, stupid question, but people want to compete, right? And I get that. Sure, you want meaningful games in September. How many times have we heard that in this organization?
Yeah.
Bullshit. You want to win a damn World Series.
Right.
That's what you want. You don't want competitive games in September. You don't want a wild card game. Hell, you don't even want an AL East title. You want a World Series. And with this core, with this team, the way they're built, can they do that? No, they cannot. And as you mentioned, Cole, can you get a wild card series and be gone like that? It's possible. It's gonna be fun. No, it's gonna be miserable like it was last season. And so, yes, is it better if they're, God forbid, like 10 games under 500 at the All-Star break or deadline, and to rip the Band-Aid off, pick a direction, and might be painful for a little while, but we're seeing what happens when it all works out. Look at the Baltimore Orioles and what their future holds, because my God, they look good. Albeit that takes a lot of losses to do so. So if you're going to pick a direction, you pick one this season. You don't wait till next year. And guess what, Jays fans? No matter what direction they pick, you're not going to like the return.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're in that spot of 5-10 games under 500, that means Vladdy and Bo aren't these MVP guys that we all believe and all think they are, or at least the casual fans do. You're not going to get what you want. So tough shit. And if you're going to rip the Band-Aid off, rip it off. Don't be the Toronto Raptors of this past 2 seasons ago and trade for Jakob Poeltl, slap a Band-Aid on a freaking gash.
Yeah,
and
trade Siakam and OG late. Like that return a year earlier is much larger than what it was that they got, and that's kind of the conversation that I've started to have with myself regarding Vladdy and Bo. It's like if we know that this core is in all likelihood not going to be able to compete for a World Series, then don't we have the answer to our question? We're at that point we'd be a year and a half out from them being free agents and walking for free anyway. So I think that Rob, I'll go to you now.
No, for starters, I disagree with the notion. I think if you have a realistic shot of getting to the postseason, it's worth it. It's worth going and trying to win. Going to making the playoffs it's not something you can see that. Which, by the way, for this Jays team to make the playoffs, if we're in that position, they will have played significantly better than they are now because they're nowhere near a playoff pace right now. So if they were to actually make the playoffs, we'd feel better about it because they'd just be playing at a way, way higher level. So from that perspective, yes. I do think, however, though, if there is no realistic shot at making the playoffs, and to the point where you're like what you mentioned, 8, 9, 7 games under 500.
So I figured this was where the conversation was going to go. So I want to know what's the magic number, because I think that the conversation doesn't just start and stop at 500 or below. I think that you can at least open up the door when you're at, like, for me, it's like, I think the magic number is like if you're 5 games above 500 or below, like 5 or down or less, then I think you should.
Okay. So if they're 5 games over 500, I can guarantee you 1,000,000% they're not going to sell. I can promise you that.
I know they won't. I know they won't.
We have seen it.
Yeah, they won't.
When they acquired Barrios, I mean, the record was no good.
Right, but I'm saying they should.
2015, when they made that all-in moves, they were under 500.
If they're 5 games over 500, then no, they should not. They won't, and they should not sell. If they're over 500. Because at that point you're a very realistic shot at making the postseason. If you just make a lateral move, you could definitely be better. No, always make the playoffs. Always make the playoffs, especially in this sport. The LA Dodgers have had 115 win seasons for the last decade, and they have nothing to show for it. More than the 88 win Washington Nationals, 88 win Atlanta Braves, whatever you want. Even last year, we saw the D-backs make the playoffs. No, you have in this sport with this much variance, where let's be honest, no one cares about World Series rings to show for it. Barry Bonds is the greatest hitter in the league. No one cares about his World Series rings. Everyone recognizes that it's a crapshoot once you get in. If you're a team that has a realistic shot at making it, you absolutely should do it. And we'll talk about not just that, but the logistical issues with it. Like the Blue Jays literally spent so much money the last 2 off seasons renovating this place, renovating the Rogers Center. So they're going to want guys, they're going to want butts in the seats, and selling them a winning team. If you're selling, you're not doing that. You're basically saying that we're going to take a step back. I think from that perspective, it's not going to happen. However, I do believe that if you're at a point, if the Blue Jays are playing at this pace, they're not going to be anywhere near a playoff spot come July. So if you're multiple games under 500, if you're more than 5 games out of the third wild card, then yeah, absolutely, you should have that logistical conversation. It's not going to happen this year. We've seen a year and a half of sample of these guys just not being what we thought they would be. Maybe it's best if we just take a step back. It's a smart baseball thing to do. But I do think it's going to be hard. I do think it's going to be hard for them to get to that point. I just think this team is good enough to, at the very least, hang around to the point where we haven't lost hope. I think that there will be. I know it's first week in May, and we're tired of hearing positive regression. But I do think that Bo is not a 550 OPS guy. I do think that this team, there is like only way up from here. And even if their ceiling is just not that great, I still don't think it's bad enough where they're actual sellers.
The one thing I will say, and Cole and I talked about this last week, right at the very end, we talked about the month of May and the schedule that they're about to go through.
Yep.
This is the time you win games. You got the A's, you have the White Sox, hell, you had the Royals and the Nationals, and you didn't do a job. Now you have the Orioles once or twice. You have their June schedule looks like a bloodbath, and you have like the Orioles twice, Yankees twice, and it looks ugly. So if you're not going to take advantage of these, again, I say mediocre teams, yet we're sitting here worse than these guys. But
I was going to say, like, we're a part of those teams.
Well, that's what I'm trying to. Yeah. So if you're not going to win these games, and you're 3 games under 500, you lost a series to Kansas City, who've been playing great ball this year, and you lose 2-3 to the Nationals, where you really shouldn't have. It's ugly. And God, I talk about the Oakland A's. I mean, they have a better record than us, and they're kicking everyone's ass right now. Albeit, I think they lost today to Rob's Marlins. But regardless, the month of May is where this team needs to turn. I want to say turn things around, but turn the narrative a little bit, because if they're not, and they're going to go into June with a sub 500 record, good luck. Good luck.
No, I said so. Like, this isn't the actual definition of where you would usually use the word litmus test. But for this Toronto Blue Jays team, it is. If you can't come out with an above 500 record in this month, then the conversation's over, in my opinion. Like, then this team is not going to be good enough this year. So I guess we've circled back all the way to this, but this is it. There's a realistic chance that at the end of this month we could have this exact conversation. I could have a definitive stance on whether this team should be selling at the deadline, because we won't even have to get to July. If this team goes below 500 in May,
they'll be at least 4 to 500, 500.
There. Yeah. It kind of lines up perfectly, fellas, with the John Schneider not making it to June. I mean, it could be a storybook. You write this shit.
Yeah. The bullpen.
Sorry, Professor. I want to make one more point, though. I think Ross Atkins knows. I think everyone knows that Ross Atkins, if this team doesn't make the playoffs, he's obviously not back next year. So that might be another logistical constraint with them selling. Like, if Ross Atkins is just basically like, yep, that's it. Like, well, let's sell. He knows he's not going to be the guy who's going to see these prospects, these magical prospects that they're going to get at the deadline if they sell. Yeah. So I think that's another logistical issue with the chances of selling.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're 27 minutes, and I think anybody that watches this or listens to this is either feeling the same way we feel, or have now we've put them into this feeling. And I do feel bad that we've done that, but this Jays team is 3 games below 500. We're coming off of 4 series losses. We lost 2 or 3 against the Washington Nationals, a bottom 10 offense in baseball. They put up 20-plus runs against us in the 3 games. And it's not just because of the offense. The offense, funny enough, against the Nats actually probably did what they were supposed to do. They scored, it was, I think, 15-something runs in the 3 games. 17 runs in the
3-game series.
Which is fantastic. Something that we've been looking for this team. Something that this team is supposed to do against that pitching staff. The bullpen has also cost us a bunch of games. They've been awful. And I mean, bottom 3 in the league in terms of bullpen ERA. Bottom 3. And at the top of that list is one of our best relievers last year, Eric Swanson. Rob, you've been probably one of his what should I say? Not hater, but you haven't waited. You haven't waited for the shoe to drop on Eric Swanson. You didn't like the move when we got him necessarily. Well, obviously we didn't like the move, but you also didn't like the guy that we were even getting back necessarily. You were skeptical about the reliever that we were getting back for Teoscar Hernandez last year and the year before that. He profiled to be elite. Last year for us, he was elite. But this year, to start the year, albeit off of an injury, a late spring training, he's been the worst reliever probably in baseball.
Yeah, it's probably hard to find a guy who's been much worse. I mean, I think you mentioned it. That you're saying to me, like, let's take a little bit off because he's only pitched, I think, 5 or 6 games
at the time.
and he has he has a negative WAR of like almost a full win, which is like it's hard to do as a reliever to have a -1 WAR in like that amount of small sample, and like a 5-6 inning sample, which just goes to show. And I'll have a Stat Genius segment later in the show about how bad he's actually been. My point with Eric Swanson, like he was a great pitcher last year. Like hats off to him, he was terrific. He was a 140 ERA plus guy. Was the 8th inning guy for the majority of the year. Was the guy you felt pretty comfortable with for the majority of his outings.
We had a legit
Obviously
conversation multiple times throughout the year of him being the closer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I never entertained it, but yeah. He is a guy who comes into today's performance, today's game, with an ERA plus of 101 for everyone who knows, league average 100. So for his entire career, sample size in the big leagues, he profiles with that season factored in, and this season obviously too, which is a little bit of extreme. He's a league average reliever, and I think that I don't want to pull the I know more than you. Like I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that other people know that I don't know, but I'm just saying that major league relievers are volatile, man. Like you look at there's a long list of relievers of guys just being guys, just guys who you have a long career as a reliever, but for the most part, you have a year that's great and a year that's not so good. So my whole point with Eric Swanson is he's just a guy. He's just a guy you could have gotten on a minor league deal. You could have gotten like you got Chad Green on a short 2-year deal with little money committed and not the second year not guaranteed. You could have gotten him like you got Jimmy Garcia. Like my point is, and obviously like, we're not going to talk about the trade. No one agrees that was a good move. I mean, try shopping Eric Swanson now for an everyday bat. I mean, you laughed at. But what I'm saying is that he was great last year, but right now he's just on a long list of relievers who've had a really great season in leverage. His last year in Seattle, as great as it was, he pitched one game in the postseason for them. And it was in that 18-inning game where like they were close to bringing another starter into pitch. You know what I mean? So there's a reason why this guy is 30 years old, had no experience in leverage before last year, like extensive experience, doesn't throw hard, especially for a reliever. Like even for like reliever standards, doesn't throw like particularly hard. Like even for like starter standards, doesn't throw hard. I think he tops out what 92, 93 on the fastball. So like yeah, like would I be floored if Eric Swanson is a guy who finishes the season with a 4.50 ERA? I'm sorry, I'm not. Like, and that sucks because the Jays are counting on this guy to be an 8th inning guy. But the reality is that as great as he was last year, I'm just not sure that he's going to be even good this year. I mean, he's going to be better than he is now because obviously right now he's been awful. But yeah, it's a really tough look. And will it turn around? Sure. I'm not sure he's going to be great. That's just my whole point. He's a reliever. A lot of variance.
That's why you don't pay relievers the big bucks. I mean, I guess term. You don't give relievers a lot of term because, as you mentioned, it can flex from one year to the next. I know Rob's favorite player, Aaron Loop. Like, I mean, there were moments that guy had put like an insane year together, and like, damn, this guy's an elite lefty. The year after, you couldn't watch the guy. I mean, it was awful. Now, again, that's Aaron Loop, right? That's just for Jays fans to look at. But you don't pay relievers, and if you don't have elite stuff, like why did Jays fans love Jordan Hicks?
Yeah.
Pound 102, 103, whatever, just insane movement. Like it was nuts. And even if he missed a pitch, that's fine. You have that elite stuff that people probably aren't going to square it up as much. But a guy like Eric Swanson is, as you mentioned, Rob, I mean, he touched 95 today, but that's on a good day. And the home run he allowed was an 87 splitter down and into a lefty in the strike zone. You just can't do that when you're a 2-pitch pitcher with not elite stuff. So, and there was, what was his last outing? He like threw in like an 85-mile-an-hour splitter right down middle. It's like, you're not going to get away with that stuff. You're not going to get away with that. And yeah, he's been, boy, I mean, unwatchable, I think is even a nice way of putting it. He has been pretty damn bad.
Here's a point. Here's a point of comparison that I haven't made publicly, but in our chat, like, look at where Jimmy Garcia was on this date last year. Look what his numbers were and what the fan base's pulse on him versus now. Like, that's just the variance of big league relievers of how it can quickly fluctuate. So yeah, that's why. Yeah,
it's a great point because going back to what we were talking about, like selling, and I hate to bring it back up and stuff, but if God forbid we get to that point, Jimmy Garcia is a guy that you're like, here, take him. He's having an incredible year. He's a reliever. Last year of his deal. That's the kind of guy. He's high upside. He's a little bit more value. I don't really know if you're going to get much more than that. But yeah, just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, ding, 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 ding. Seattle, you need a back-end reliever for your playoff push. You want to give us, I don't know, Cal Riley or something. Somebody like that, an everyday player. Yeah.
I'm not sure anyone's stupid enough to trade a reliever for an everyday player, but that's just me.
Yeah, except for our front office.
Yeah, Russ.
Right, of course.
My only rebuttal to the Eric Swanson stuff is that we talk about if he has elite stuff. Yes, his fastball is not considered elite, but his stuff is actually elite. It does profile to be elite. Even this year. You look at his baseball savant page, you'll see a lot of red. At least before today, you would have, which is when I had this argument previously. His baseball savant page is actually elite. So that was my biggest problem with the Eric Swanson slander. Is like, look, like the data that we use to suggest whether somebody has it or doesn't have it. The data that we suggest that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. profiles to be an elite hitter, like Eric Swanson has it, and he had it in 2021, 2022, and 2023, and then this year. So. It just sucks that in reality, it's a lot like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. We just aren't getting what the profile is.
So let me just be very clear about what I'm saying here. I expect Eric Swanson will be a big part of this bullpen. I still think he obviously will bounce back. He's not going to finish with an ERA in the 16s. My whole point is that I wouldn't be shocked if he's nowhere near the pitcher that he was last year. And like he's not going to be. Like factually, he's not going to be. Like he's already allowed more than half the runs he's allowed all of last year. So unless he's the best pitcher in baseball from here on out, like he's just not going to have those kind of numbers because it's just the sample size is so small. But that's just my main point is that I think it's very much conceivable that he's just an average reliever this year, like he has been for his whole career, 101 ERA plus.
My last point on the bullpen, and Rob, you mentioned in the chat, he goes 20 scoreless innings in a row the rest of the way. ERA still
that's the stat genius segment.
Shit.
All good.
It's fine.
It's all good. All good.
That got me frisky. You were talking about even if he has a great second half, and I'm like, oh, that's a juicy one.
That's where we're going anyway. So let's
go there anyways.
All right. Perfect. All right, time for the Stat Genius segment. We have Pricey already gave us a little preview of Eric Swanson. I hate to pile on this guy. I'm not a hater. I think Eric Swanson, I'm sure he's a great guy. You know, obviously we know that the spring training didn't get off to the best start from him from both a personal and a professional level. I'm very hopeful that he'll come back. The Blue Jays need him to come back and be a very big part of this bullpen. He's more than capable of doing it. But yeah, it's been awful. We mentioned the raw numbers, how bad they've been, and just an idea of how bad he's actually been. I did the calculation myself. If Eric Swanson were to go 20 straight innings, whether that's, how many appearances, doesn't matter, but 20 straight innings, if he were to go 0, not give up a run, nothing to do with whip or anything, but just don't give up a run, 20 straight scoreless appearance, which, by the way, is over 2 full games of scoreless outings. Very difficult to do. I'm not sure he's ever had a stretch that dominant in his career. His ERA on the season would still be over 4. Like that just goes to show how bad he's been. And yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that he can bounce back, but even if he does bounce back, a ton of the damage has already been done. And just to bounce back off that, I mentioned in my previous point, he's already given up more than half the runs he gave up last year, a season that he started in March, ended in early October, and we're the first week of May, and he's already given up more than half. He's given up more runs this season than he had all of 2022 with Seattle, the year that he was so dominant that we had to trade Teoscar Hernandez for him for. So that's just an idea, a look at things can turn around, but he's gonna have to pitch great the rest of the season for it to be even somewhat redeemable, that trade, which probably isn't. But anyways, yeah, that's the Stat Genius segment of the day.
You said you don't like to pile on. I'm going to pile on with another negative Stat Genius. It was during a conversation that we didn't get into for the recapping of the National Series, and it's been talked about ad nauseum. It's George Springer.
Oh
my God,
he is awful. And I have no problems with who he was, in Houston. In fact, even despite 2017, I thought he was an elite hitter. But he hasn't been that.
Factually, he was.
Yeah, but he hasn't been that in a very long time.
Yeah.
And the underlying numbers are proving that. This is the lowest hard hit percentile that he has ever been in his entire career. He's in the 24th percentile for hard hit percentage this year, and that's not close. His next lowest in his entire career, the lengthy career, the guy that is 24 home runs away from tying Ricky Henderson for leadoff home runs, that guy, the next closest year he had was the 44th percentile in hard hit percentage. He's awful. And as I talked about with James, as I ranted on Blue Jay Center, which a bunch of you did see, it's not too early, John. It has been long enough. This guy stinks and has no business being in the top of our order. You could have an argument. He has no business being in an everyday lineup. But he's getting paid $20 million. We have no choice to put him in an everyday lineup. I still do, trust him to contribute every once in a while in the bottom of our lineup, so I would keep him there. But he has no business being in the top 5. None. It's not too early. It needs to happen like yesterday.
Guys, he has. Again, I know home runs isn't really a big, number to go off for as a leadoff guy, but as you mentioned, Cole, 24 away from Ricky Henderson. He has 3 home runs this year, one since the opening week of the season. The opening series of the season.
Wasn't it the opening? Didn't he get 2 in game 1? Or
yeah,
no,
one game 1 and one game 2.
Yeah, one exactly.
So it's like which is crazy, right? To even think about. You had the 2 home runs in the first series of the season. We're like, oh, is George back? And then it's like, no, brick wall. So in the other one, he hit like to dead center at KC, and I'm like, yeah, sure, that make sense to me.
Yeah,
no, it's been bad, boys. I mean, God, it's just singles galore. That's really all it is. And when he is getting hits, it's singles galore.
Yep. No, I have a ton of issues with this lineup, and I spoke it on the show, so we're not going to get into it today because we don't have time to get into it today. But yeah, I have a ton of issues with this lineup right now.
And
okay,
I think with George Springer, we talk about when Vladimir Guerrero is struggling. We talk about how he hits the ball into the ground. We try to analyze and why this is happening. I think with George Springer, we all kind of know why this is going on. The guy was going into his age 35 season. We have so much data. Guys just decline. Guys, in their age 34, 35 season, they're just not the same guy. The bat speed disappears. Yeah. Baseball is not quite like other sports where decline seems to be a little more glacial. Whereas like in basketball, you're not as great, you're not as athletic anymore. So what? You develop a 3-point shot. You can contribute other ways. Whereas a hitter, once the bat speed goes, you're not anymore. And look, we know this was the cost of doing business. To get George Springer here, you have to give him that extra year with that $25 million term for that year. We knew that the end of that contract was going to look ugly. Probably wasn't, it probably aged a little quicker than we all would have liked, but at the end of the day, that's just what major league contracts are. By the end of them, they don't look good. You're going to get very little dollar per WAR value by the end of that contract. And George Springer was obviously a great signing for the Jays. I think we can all agree we'd all do it again in a heartbeat if we could. Yep. He had many good seasons for this team during their playoff runs. He was a big contributor. That can be changed. We all acknowledge what's happening. We all acknowledge that this was the cost of doing business. What we can do is not let it destroy the season, which give him the most at-bats on the team, which is what you're doing by putting him in that leadoff spot. The higher you hit in the order, the more at-bats and plate appearances you're going to get. You can prevent that. And what I don't understand is that the Blue Jays did this. When he came up, he didn't hit leadoff right away. Like, remember, like back in 2021 when he was hurt at the start of the year, he came up. I believe he hit near the middle of the order. Last year in August, during that 0 for whatever spell, 30-something spell, they moved Whitfield, who was aging that year, into the 1 hole and moved him down in the lineup. So, like, I don't understand why you're shuffling the lineup, but you're so committed to literally the guy that you can argue is your biggest problem. Yeah. He's been your biggest problem. I don't understand why all of a sudden now you decide, no, we can't go against the grain. We can't move the guy who's making the most money in the team down in the order. George Springer shouldn't be hitting above 5th. I even think that's too generous. I made a point today in the chat. David Schneider, the way he's hitting, I mean, you have the on-base guy. You can even put Justin Turner there, who's gotten on-base a ton. Danny Jansen, like,
I don't think it's that difficult. Like,
anybody else.
Today's lineup, I've said it from the get-go. You want to talk about a guy that has good bat-to-ball skills and will put the ball in play a lot and we'll see the pit. Ernie fucking Clement. If we're talking about a situation where Ernie Clement should be batting leadoff over George Springer, I think that's everything that needs to say. And I think that that's a real conversation. I trust Ernie Clement a ton more than I trust George Springer
right now. Yeah. I think that basically our main message. We can talk about who would actually be the fit replacement. I think our overall main message is that he shouldn't be hitting leadoff. We all kind of agree on that. There's nothing to really go much more into detail on.
Yeah. Let's be honest, guys. Everybody in this fan base believes that. Yeah. But the team's running, but the guys running the team. Yeah.
That's it. And maybe they do too, but I think what Professor mentioned on the show today is that maybe they don't want to admit that they're wrong. And it's not really admitting that you're wrong. Like I said,
I know
we all agree that just because the George Springer's not a great player anymore doesn't mean that the signing was bad 3 years ago. Like it's come on. It's about adjusting to the new data you've been given. And to me, I feel like they're slow. They're slow on this, and it's getting late early. And I hope that when they actually do realize, because there's no way he ends the season and hitting leadoff. I can promise you that much. Eventually, it's going to get bad enough.
Yeah.
But I hope that it's not too late when they do ultimately come to that realization.
Yeah.
If this isn't bad enough, then I'm scared to see what the hell where they do draw that line.
Exactly,
man.
No, I was somebody that didn't like the Hyun-Jin Ryu contract the day that it happened, and yet I still agreed with making the signing for the Hyun-Jin Ryu contract. So we are not at all portraying the fact that George Springer shouldn't have been signed or shouldn't have been signed for the term or amount of money that he was signed for.
We also knew that the only way to bring him here was to give him that extra year. Yeah. We all knew that was the case.
And as Rob said, sign me up. I'd do it again. I would do it again. So I rolled the dice because I would think that we wouldn't do this again.
Gentlemen, I know that I think we're 45 minutes in this show. This is typically when we want to roll the on the farm segment. But I do think that, not to stay on the negative trend, but I do feel like it's important that we touch on Bichette before we kick it over.
Yeah.
Okay. You mean and how checked out he looks?
He looks awful. Yeah. I mean, he looks frustrated. Dude got tossed out of the game yesterday. Albeit umpires' egos, love them, but regardless,
no emotion. Just walk right into and I know that there's something you can do about there, but it's just like at least show some fight. Show that like you care.
No, take it a step further. I said on the show today.
Yeah.
A grand slam to put you up 5-1 in a game that Alec Manoah is starting.
Oh, by the way, guys, Vlad hit a grand slam today. Some positive vibes to sprinkle in there.
Vlad hits a grand slam in the second inning of the game, and a game that Alec Manoah is making his first big league start since August 10th, and he didn't even drop the bat. He had a bat in his hand. He had his helmet on. He was stretching. You wouldn't even know. If you were watching if you had an ISO cam on Bichette, you wouldn't have known that we hit a home run to put the lead up 5-1. You wouldn't have known.
Now, isn't it? I think I'm right with this, but we mentioned how George Springer, the first 2 home runs he hit out of the 3 that he has, was in the first series of the season. Yeah. Bichette has 1. It was in the first series of the season. Like it
was against Seattle. It was the first home series against Seattle.
Yeah, he hit a home run against Seattle. Okay, regardless.
I mean, it was early. It was like we're coming on a month now.
We're going on a month of no home runs. And hell, Vladdy's home run today, was first since April 10th, almost a month for him. So it's been awful for Bo. He looks checked out, as you mentioned. He's just swinging at first pitches. I mean, how many times are we seeing that? The dude that always gets down 0-2, battles, then crushes a mistake. And now he's just flailing at first pitches and just ground balls everywhere, pop-ups, and he just, like you said, he looks checked out. He looks like he doesn't care, and it's awful.
And you want to talk about a bingo board for the Toronto Blue Jays season this year, and you grab a bingo board that how good it could go and what you'd have on that board, and then you want to talk about a bingo board of how bad it could have went and what you would have on that board. No matter what situation you want to put on your bingo board, Bichette being checked out in May would not have been on it. Like one guy that we all had we wanted to hand this guy a $300 million contract this offseason. We're like, you know what? If you're going to hand out one, it's Bichette. He deserves it. He's been your most consistent hitter. He's been your best hitter. He's been a lot closer to what Vladdy was supposed to be than Vladdy ever has been, except for that 1 year in Dunedin. And now we're a month. We're a month and a half in the season, and Bichette, he legitimately looks like he doesn't even want to be on this team, let alone in the lineup.
And I think I think a lot of people you'll see a lot of people will point to the contract, that how he hasn't gotten the contract yet, and that's why he's frustrated, unhappy with the team. Maybe, I understand if that's the case. I get it. Like after that performance, you want to get paid, but the reality is that whether or not you got in that contract or not, you're going to get paid. Your free agency is coming up in 2 years, whether that's going to be for the Toronto Blue Jays or not. You're going to get a lot of money to play this game, so it doesn't behoove you well.
Or you want a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. So there's even if the Toronto Blue Jays, you don't want to play for them, you're not happy here. Which, by the way, he hasn't said. Let me just make it very clear. We're all going on assumption, body language. None of this is public. He's never said anything close to that. But I'm just saying, if that's really how he feels, like what the fans think he feels, it still isn't. There's no reason why he'd be mailing it in. At the very least, have your good personal numbers, get paid, and get out of here. But right now, he's not even that. There's no incentive to him mailing it in.
That would piss me off to no end if that's the case. And he's frustrated about the no contract yet. Yeah. Because
we won't
they gave you a 3-year deal so you didn't have to go to arbitration.
Yep.
Why are you pissed? Vladdy had to go through arbitration last year. If anybody, he's the one that would be pissed. So if that's the case and he's checked out because he doesn't have some $300 million contract over 10, 12 years or whatever, See you never. I mean,
Yeah.
God, if that's what we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
But I know,
No,
again, all assumptions, all off body language. But if that's the case, boy, it's a tough look.
Yep. Okay. Well, we gotta get going. Let's go to On the Farm.
We
All right, fellas. Well, we're starting to do a little something different here on the farm. Usually I just kind of rip through some guys' positives and negatives, but I got into columns now, trending up, trending down. Let's start with the trending down stuff. And there's only a couple of guys on here that I wanted to touch on. One, I mean, again, I'm not really going to dwell on it too much with Arjun Namala, but since he's so young and he's in Dunedin, but boy, the numbers are pretty rough. Hitting a $178 with a 288 OBP and a 599 OPS. Albeit it's better than Bichette, but he's been awful so far in Dunedin. But again, high upside, very young kid, just a long way to go. And he can have a great week or two, and then those numbers will look totally different. But not great to start. And also, Cole and I were talking about it. It was either last week or a couple weeks before. Brandon Barriera left his start, looked pissed, kind of gave me the Ramon Ortiz look of like he was not happy with after throwing a pitch, slamming his glove down and going down in the crouch. It didn't look good. And everyone was scared, and the results were true. MLB Pipeline posted this with a quote. He has undergone a combination Tommy John surgery and internal brace procedure on his throwing elbow. So Brandon Barriera is done for this season, and I'm assuming most, if not all, of next year. So lovely, lovely. If you're looking for the win now Blue Jays and trading prospects, there's one off the books. So rough time for him. He's had some just tough injury luck to start his career with this team. Now let's get to the positive stuff because we haven't had much in this pod. We need a few little things to get us going. And we'll start with Elvis because the guy continues to mash baseballs in AAA, and it makes us all pissed off because we're seeing Vogel back. We're seeing Craig's son, Kevin Bichette, get ABs, and we're watching Elvis mash balls. And even today, just destroying an RBI single to the left off of Paul Skeens. And I'm like, okay, he's hitting 296 with a 941 OPS. A 367 OBP. I mean, he's ready to go, guys. I mean, he's absolutely ready to go. The problem is the logjam of mid players on the Blue Jays that they don't want to fire down through waivers and lose them.
God forbid. God forbid this guy on waivers.
Holy crap. God forbid you lose one of those guys. I mean, it's the end of the world. And you bring up Elvis and everyone's going to be pissed that you lost Ernie or something. Even though Ernie's a real looking player, but we have so many of these guys. Now, let's get to some other guys.
Is your elbow feeling okay? You need a little IL stint there, buddy?
A little sore. Yeah, a little headache going on. Josh Kasevich is a guy that has just been crushing the baseball at AA. He's hitting 340 on the season with just under a 400 OBP, albeit no power, 839 OPS. But he's mashing the ball, and this is you always hear during prospect guys who look at prospects is that the biggest jump instead of like AAA to the big leagues is that A ball or advanced A to AA level. And the fact that he's gone from that and he is relishing in that spot there in New Hampshire is a great sign. Now there's two guys here to wrap it up that we haven't talked on here yet. And they're very young players, but we talked about, I think like the first episode, right? We talked about how this organization has drafted since they've been a part of the Blue Jays. It's all been like safe guys, good back to ball skills, not much upside, but they're good all around players. And we talked about, drafting Arjun Namala, a high upside guy. Finally, they're starting to get some guys that could grow into something extremely good. Well, guys that they've brought in, they drafted this guy last year, Jace Borofen. Again, he's not in the top 20, but he's like just outside the top 20. And he was last year he played for the Florida Coast League Blue Jays and then a little bit of Dunedin. You combine the numbers and it's like 50 games, 299 average, 443 OBP, just under an 1100 OPS. He was mashing baseballs. And so this year to start in Vancouver, again, we talked about that jump from advanced A to AA. He's in that advanced A part in was it like 20 games or something like that. He's hitting 291 with a 487 OBP and an 870 OPS. Lefty, 6'2" power bat. He's only 22. He was just drafted last year with Arjun Namala. Kid looks good, and he's a lefty big boy. So, I mean, and he's an outfielder. So I'm just going to put that out there. And the last guy who's probably the farthest away of everybody, but I think has the biggest upside of all, is Emmanuel Bonilla. He's in the Jays' top 10 in their prospect rankings. It's the highest upside, I think, in the organization. You look at his numbers last year, and again, Dominican Summer League, he's only 18, so it's such a young guy, kind of with Arjun Damala's standpoint. He's hitting 307 with an 836 OPS last year in 50 games, so it's a decent sample size. And they just played their first game in the Florida Coast League, so again, that's where Alec Manoah was getting beat by a bunch of teammates last week. But he played his first game with the Florida Coast League Blue Jays. It was either yesterday or today. Went 4 for 5 with 3 doubles and 3 runs scored. He's a big 6'1", 18 years old outfielder. So some really positive signs from some of the really younger players. And again, if they do pivot, they've got some guys in the lower minor leagues that could, I mean, again, it's prospects, right? You never know what the hell you're going to get. But from the looks of it, there are quite a few positives come out of the minor leagues, as much as the big club right now is complete, flat out miserable. There are some positive signs south of the border. So that's about all I got. But it is some good stuff, some positive things from some young players with some high upside.
Yeah. All I hope for is at the end of this year. Yeah.
That's week 6 of the on the farm segment being more positive than the actual major league team.
Exactly. All I hope for is at the end of the year, the system ranks a lot higher, so that at least the future for this team looks a lot better without the window being shut.
It will be their sellers. If they're sellers,
exactly.
They'll have some more reinforcements coming down.
Exactly. Because regardless of how bad or how underwhelming Vlad and Bo have been, as I've said before, the profile looks great. I'm sure there's a bunch of hitting coaches in this world that are salivating at the chance of being able to try to fix Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or trying to be able to just tweak Bichette just a little bit to get him back into his groove. I'm sure we would get, a couple good top 100 prospects for these guys. No questions asked. Okay. Phillies, 2-game set. Short preview. We got Jose Barrios going game 1. But luckily for us, we got Spencer Turnbull going against us, and he's been fan-fucking-tastic, a 1.7 ERA and a 0.8 whip. And then we have Chris Bassett on the road against one of the best lineups in baseball, going in game 2. And oh yeah, we're going against Zach Wheeler. And this isn't one of those Zach Wheeler years where maybe, we got him off of rough start. No, we got him at his peak. He's peak Zach Wheeler right now, a 1.9 ERA and a 0.9 whip. And the Phillies are one of the best teams in baseball. Top 5 in almost every single category you can look at.
They have the best record. I think they have the best record in the league.
I don't know if that's
they might. They're 23-11 coming into today. Yeah. They were down against the Giants last time I checked. But yeah, they're first in the NL East. And
they're up 5-3 on the Giants. Right
gotcha. Yeah, and they're top 5. Every single metric that you look at, they're like top 5, top 6, top 7. So good luck. Because Jose Barrios has also been bad. Or not bad. He's been worse on the road in his career.
So they are tied for first in the big leagues in record with the Orioles.
Fair.
So
win a game. Win a game. Find a way to get one. Find a way to get one.
Please.
I don't know.
I'm
obviously I like my chances. I like my chances with Jose Barrios, but that lineup.
Gotta find a way to get one. Gotta find a way to get one.
That lineup: Bryce Harper, lefty; Kyle Schwarber, lefty. There's
Oh no, it's gonna be tough, but they gotta find a way to get one. You can't lose. What would that be? That would be their 5th straight series loss. It was a 2-game sweep, but still, you'd be then 5 games under 500. The vibes would be awful. You go in there, you win a game, you split against a good team. You have a couple off days. You're feeling a little bit better. Find a way to get one, and if they're gonna get one, it's probably gonna be the Jose Barrios game. So let's hope that happens.
And after the Phillies series, you got Twins at home, and then you go to Baltimore. So
not get easier, by the way. Before today's loss, had won 12 in a row.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah. The last time they did that, they won the World Series.
Okay.
What was that, 91?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's either the last time they did it, they won the World Series or went to the World Series. That I do know.
Okay.
They were there.
It might have been the same year. Anyways, yeah.
That's
not easy.
That's all we got, guys. I am sorry for the lack of positivity, but if you have any comments that could bring me around on the positive vibes for this team, I'm happy to read them, and I will shout them out in the next show. That's it from James Price, Rob Pentalman, and Cole Whiston here on the Blue Jay Center podcast, presented by the Sick Podcast Network.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Blue Jay Center on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.